Welcome to segment 6.3. This is unit 6, looking at market failure and the role of government. And in this segment, we're looking at public and private goods. How do we tell the difference? Well, let's take a look. We have public goods, the idea of public sanitation. We have public sewer plants, sewage plants, sanitation plants. National defense is another great example of a public good. Now, let's go into a little more detail here in terms of what's happening here. So a public good is essentially those types of things. They're used for the public. Everybody gets them. There's really not any differentiation in one person gets it, one person doesn't. It's what we call non-rival in consumption, in that the idea there is that you're not using it up. If one person is using the sewer system, it doesn't mean you can't use the sewer system. It's also non-excludable. You can't say, oh, well, this community gets it and these communities don't. It's either a public good or it isn't. Now, a private good essentially is something like wheat or bathroom fixtures, something that you're buying and you're using up, right? It is excludable in that you have to buy it, you have to pay for it. It's also rival in consumption, in that if you're buying it, that means someone else isn't buying it. Only one person can use it at a time. Public good, think of a public pool. You have a situation where everybody can use the public pool. You can't really exclude people from a public pool, and it is non-rival. Many people can be using the pool all at the same time. That's not the case when we look at the idea of private goods. Private goods you're paying for, you're benefiting from those private goods, and by buying it, someone else can't buy it too. You've bought that particular product. Now we get to a couple of others, which is common resources. Think of this like clean water or biodiversity. These are rival in consumption in that you using it means someone else may not be able to use it, but it also means it's non-excludable. You can't exclude one household from using the water when every household has access to it. The idea of excluding something in terms of what we call an artificially scarce good would be addressing the idea here of pay-per-view movies, or if you're buying computer software. We can exclude you if you don't pay for the service, for the resource. But it is non-rival in that many people can pay to watch a movie, and other people can pay to watch the movie too. That just because you're buying it doesn't mean other people can't buy it too. That's the idea of non-rival in consumption. So these are the four types of goods that we see in public and in differentiating between public and private goods. So what impact does this have? Well, let's talk about public goods for a second. So if you didn't have any government, how would schools, parks, and freeways be different? We probably wouldn't have any, right? Would there be enough to meet our needs? Probably not, because again, it's government that's stepping in to provide those resources. And so this gives way to what we call the public sector, the part of the economy that is controlled by the government. The private sector would be businesses, individuals, consumers. You're working and making money and you're spending it on your family. If you're a business, you're working in business in order to make money, and you're going to pay your employees, and then you're going to spend it on yourself and put money back into the business. So public goods are trying to provide public goods and services, and the government is doing this, and it is not going to be practical that private industry is going to step in and provide these services because there's no incentive for them to do so. They're going to lose money if they do that. So that's where government steps in to provide those public goods. And the reason why businesses don't do this is because not everybody's paying into the system. It's what we call the free rider problem. Somebody's getting a free ride, and we talked about this, the idea of group projects. There's always that one person in your group that doesn't do anything but gets the same grade as all of the people that worked really hard on the project. You hate that, right? We all do. That's the free rider problem. People that don't necessarily contribute but are benefiting from it. That's the idea of a free rider. And those individuals will benefit without paying, and that is the free rider problem that we continue to see in public goods. So what's wrong with this picture? Well, look at this. Tickets to view the sunset, $10. Well, how can you enforce that? I mean, seriously? And so that's the point we're making, going back to this idea of public and private goods. Is this excludable? Not really. Is it is it rival in competition in terms of excluding the consumption? Not really. And it means that it's non-rival in that I can watch it, you can watch it, thousands of people can watch the sunset. We don't have to pay for it. We're benefiting from that. So what we see here is people who are downloading music illegally, part of a free rider problem. They're not paying the artists who are reliant on those monies, those resources in order to pay their mortgage, to pay their rent, to pay their bills. So we see people who are watching a street performer, but they don't contribute, they don't donate to that individual. These are free riders. Teenagers who live at home and don't have a job, you're a free rider, right? Half joking, half not. But that is the idea behind this in terms of the free rider problem. It is a situation in which you're looking at things that are non-excludable. You are participating in that, and in some cases it is non-excludable, but it's rival in consumption. If you're using it, that means somebody else can't, or non-rival in consumption, in that we're not going to use it all up just by me being out there. And that's where, and when it's non-rival in consumption, it's less of concern when it comes to being a free rider problem. It's more if it's rival in consumption, in that you're using up a resource that someone else who's paying into the system is not going to have access to, or going to have to pay more in order to get the same access. That's where free rider becomes a problem. So think about it. Why is Domino's Pizza providing this public good? Well, they're paving the streets. Well, think about Domino's. Domino's delivers, and 30 minutes or less, right? But what if the roads are really lousy? They're not going to get those pizzas there in time. It's going to cost them money. And isn't this a great positive externality? This is a positive externality in terms of what they're doing here. They're providing a public good, but it's benefiting them as well as society. So it is a marginal social benefit in addition to being a marginal private benefit for them. Their company wins, the society wins, they're seen as a good corporate citizen, and more people will order their product. It's a win-win all the way around. So this is why Domino's Pizza is doing this sort of thing. So let's look at public goods. Public goods have two criteria, okay? They're non-exclusionary. You can't exclude people from those particular items, even if they don't pay. The free rider problem, right? They're non-excludable, and the national defense is a good example of this, and they're non-rival. The idea is you're sharing in the consumption. So in this case, you can't exclude people from it, but you also aren't necessarily using it up if you're using those resources. You're not eliminating other people's chances of being able to use those resources too. So that's what we see here. And a city park is a great example. Unless there are thousands of people pouring into the park, which is unlikely, the idea of using a city park is definitely a good example where you could have a free rider and you could have a taxpayer, an individual who doesn't pay taxes, an individual who does. It is non-rival in competition. And it is non-excludable in that anybody can use the park. And that's what we see here in terms of public goods that are out there today. They're non-exclusionary and they're non-rival. So that concludes this segment. Coming up next in 6.4, we're going to look at the effects of government intervention and what impact it has on different markets. We'll take a look at that coming soon.